Hello and welcome to Everything's Fine, probably your weekly antidote to bad news. I'm Jim and I'm joined, as I so often am, by Stu and Gemma. Now, we've spent the last couple of episodes talking about climate innovation, environmental progress, and various people doing their best to stop Donald Trump digging up the Pacific Ocean. Tonight, we're going somewhere a bit different. We're going around the world without having to deal with airport security. Our guest today has travelled to some of the strangest places on Earth. He's met some extraordinary people, explored conspiracy theories, written books, made documentaries, and spent a considerable amount of time shouting into a giant mobile phone. It's Dom Joly. Dom, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much. I actually haven't spent a considerable amount of time shouting into mobile phones, probably about 12 minutes in total of my life, but it is
Really?
what I'm known for, yeah. I mean, I don't just wander around shouting into a phone all the time, but those
fair
12 minutes have been very lucrative, so it's nice.
For sure.
Excellent. So look, we're going to talk about travel, comedy, conspiracy theories, misinformation, why humans believe the weird things we believe, and whether travelling around the world is actually the best way to discover that people are generally much less frightening than the internet might have you believe. But first, I mean, Dom, what are you up to at the moment, and where can people find out more about it?
Actually filming a new show at the moment with the guy that I made Trigger Happy with. It's Trigger Happy's 25th anniversary, and I'm about to go on a massive 121-date tour. If you're interested in that, I should be somewhere near your street. You can go to domjolly.tv. But I've got back together with the guy I made Trigger Happy with, Sam, who'd been in LA for ages, and we started making this show. And then people kept saying, which is very on point for this podcast actually, people kept saying to me, oh, Trigger Happy was great, but you couldn't do it now. Everything's too woke, you'd be stabbed, like you just couldn't do it. And so many people said that on comments that we started to think, well, maybe that's true, like maybe life has completely changed. And so really just for sort of interest, we took 4 Trigger Happy characters and went to exactly where we filmed them 25 years ago and did some new stuff. And I mean, firstly, spoiler, did not get stabbed. Everything was fine. It's quite interesting, actually. Doing hidden camera is actually a very good tester of what the streets are like, because we do it everywhere. I'm randomly approaching people on the street. And I'll be honest with you, I saw absolutely no difference in reactions. And we've now moved on, having done those. So we just thought, actually, we're having so much fun. And we're filming a whole lot of new stuff, which is called Mugwuffin, and that's dropping in September. But there's no difference. I've noticed no difference at all, genuinely, on the street in the sort of reactions of people, or that people are more angry. If anything, Trigger Happy and Mugwuffin show that actually overall people are fairly patient, will put up with stuff, and actually quite nice. The big difference, the only real difference, is that now, so for instance, if I did the snail crossing the road now, by the time the snail had crossed the road, 40 people would have recorded it on their mobile, posted it on TikTok, and when on my carefully curated and edited bit went up, people would accuse me of having nicked it off John 316110 or whatever. So we just have to film in a different way. Overall, I'm here to tell you that from a hidden camera perspective, I think Britain's exactly the same. You know, all this crap about London having fallen and people thinking they're going to be murdered 4 times the moment they arrive in London. I mean, I'm in London right now. We've been filming all day. It's just, fine. It really is. But,
And the latest statistics show that crime is falling anyway, isn't it? Especially in London.
Well, crime has fallen. I think it's more, and this is the important thing, because people don't believe statistics anymore in the same way that you just join your camp and you're either on one side or the other and you follow your side's statistics. And so it's less about, you can tell people that statistics, crime has fallen, and it has, but it's about how you feel. And they claim, the people that are terrified, that they feel frightened because it's frightening. And I don't think they do. They feel frightened because of social media and the algorithm they've fallen into, which kind of frightens them. So it's a kind of catch-22 situation that I can't change people's minds, really. People have decided, certain people, that London is terrible because there are billionaire grifters pushing that narrative to try and get their votes. And it's Bin Day coming up. I don't know when this is going out, but this is 2 days before Bin Day in Clacton. And unfortunately, I think he will just beat a bin, but not by much.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I think the latest numbers are showing he's going to get at least a fifth of the vote. That's mission accomplished, isn't it?
Well, the bin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I genuinely, up to about 2 weeks ago, felt once all the major parties have fallen out, I thought Farage would pull out, because if you think about it, like there's 30% of people that support Farage, means there's 70% that don't. And I genuinely thought there was a sort of boaty McBoatface situation where people might vote for the bin, and he could, if he'd have lost to the bin, and who knows, maybe he will, but I don't think he will. If he lost to the bin, that'd be it. He'd be finished. So I kind of thought he wouldn't risk it, but I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think there's about 40 people running now.
Yeah.
I considered running to promote Mugwuffin, but I just thought there'd be too many people, too many weirdos.
But even if he wins, he's still only beating the bin.
Oh, 100%. No, of course. And who cares, frankly. But there was a moment where I thought, holy shit, what if the bin won?
Yeah.
Although I find the bin annoying, I have to say. Like, I love what he stands for and I like that tradition. And I've stood in Parliament for weird things, but I don't find the bin quite as funny as he should be. I have to be honest. I don't know why. He reminds me, I don't know if you're familiar with Cycling Mikey on YouTube, who's this annoying South African who puts YouTubes all over, puts cameras all over him and gets people for being on the phone. They're both sort of slightly annoying South Africans because he sounds South African. But anyway, I'm getting off the subject.
We shall see. Hopefully, Bin Day will give us some great entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've travelled to some of the world's most unusual places and met extraordinary people. What's one journey that fundamentally changed the way you see humanity for the better?
I don't know. I mean, I've been to a lot of places where people have been in terrible situations like North Korea and Iran and under sort of horrible governments. And yet people are brilliant and lovely. Actually, North Korea, very different. North Korea, it is like it's the closest you get to going to space travel. And it's kind of like visiting a cult because any other place I've met under a dictatorship, people, when they get away from the official guides, tend to be very warm and kind of want to talk to you. In North Korea, I mean, everyone's terrified and it is actually just like a giant cult. Iran was very interesting and actually one of the warmest places I've ever been, not heating wise, just reception and people were incredible. So the perception of places, because you only ever see them when they're on the news, is difficult. But I think probably the one that really made me change the most is I've written a new book, which is not out yet. It's coming out in next January. And it's called The Soul Tourist in Desperate Pursuit of Happiness. And I've been going around the world hanging out conspiracy theories, which depressed me deeply, and I wanted a cleanse. And so I kind of went off on a jokey look around the world, looking at the world of wellness and happiness and sort of from the perspective of a middle-aged ex-goth who kind of doesn't think anything's going to help. But if I did happen to stumble across something, then maybe it'd be great. And I went to Denmark, which is 2 countries vie for the happiest country in the world, Denmark and Finland. And both countries have actual organizations within their government that try to get them to be top of that league. They really care about it. Denmark also has quite a high suicide rate. And also when I did my conspiracy book, there was a conspiracy that Denmark didn't exist. So I went to Denmark and I genuinely think Denmark is the happiest place I've ever been to. And it's very interesting as a place. Like the cities are built for people. It's such a sort of obvious thing, but Copenhagen's such a livable city and it just feels like it's been built to assist your life, not to fine you and raise income for local governments and stuff. But there's a law, and I haven't forgotten my research, but I think it's it's not Yentl, that's a film by Barbara Streisand. I can't remember, but there's a law in Denmark that they all get raised with. And essentially there's lots of rules about it. It's essentially about being a better person, but it boils down to the fact that basically however big you get, however famous or successful you get, you're not any better than the lowest person in the country or in your business. And there is a happiness index thing which shows that the happiest countries are where there's the least amount of division or of income, for instance, between the lowest and the highest. And in the old days, that used to be something like 20 times, something like that, from the CEO to the cleaner. And we're now, I think Britain was something, I mean, these are not facts, I know, but we're like 5,000 or something. I mean, it's incredible. So I think Denmark, they just did seem incredibly happy. And then you look back in Denmark's history, like they were the only country that almost saved their entire Jewish population. They did it in a very cool way. Everyone got together and helped them get to Sweden. All their houses were kept for them. No other country did that. So it's a lot of little things in Denmark really made me think, what is it about Denmark that makes it good? Like, why could we not have that? What can we take from Denmark and like use here? And I'm not sure, actually, because I think a lot of it is to do with the way they're raised. Denmark is full of people that used to live on very small farms everywhere. And then they all moved to the cities and they still have that community spirit, which sometimes can be bad as well, because you have to fit in. It's not a very individualistic society, Denmark. It is a bit of the cooperative. But it's Scandi socialism, I suppose, and in a sense, that's no bad thing. So I was really blown away, having been to so many. I love going to strange, horrible places, supposedly, because they're always interesting. But actually going to Denmark and not looking for anything bad and finding it as just this incredible country with incredibly kind, nice people, I thought was really good.
I mean, you mentioned going to sort of small or frightening sort of places. What would you say are some of the most misunderstood countries that you've been to?
I think Iran is very misunderstood. I mean, Iran, most of the Middle East, I mean, it changes, but most of the Middle East is essentially run by Western-backed governments, and they have quite a radical population. Iran is the complete opposite. It's run by a radical Islamic caliphate or religious theocracy, and yet a lot of the population are incredibly moderate westernized, just want to go live in LA, frankly. They really like visitors, and they're so used to visitors, and now no one goes there anymore. So the only visitors that go there are, news journalists and people like me. So I think Iran is very, very misunderstood. Lebanon is, a country I grew up in, which I could go on for the whole podcast about how it's misunderstood on so many levels, in that, people think of Lebanon and think of it as, because they think it's in the Middle East, they think it's either a desert or it's a war zone. And it's neither. I mean, it can be a war zone occasionally, but it looks like the south of France, where I grew up. It was an hour to the ski slopes, an hour to the beach. There's the best food in the world, filled with Roman ruins. It's got an incredible mix and culture that's so fantastic. And everyone survived together for 400 years before it finally imploded with the civil war. But it's still, I think what's incredible is people think Lebanon is just chaos. And actually, when you get there, the country just functions all the time. You can go to Lebanon right now, have an amazing time. Everyone's going to work, everyone's going to the beach, everyone's going walking, they're doing incredible things. I think there's an incredible thing about how people survive in war zones. Even Northern Ireland, to an extent, you talk to people in Northern Ireland and the troubles were going on, and people just assume all of Belfast was just car bombs. And it isn't. You just have to get on with life. It's that blitz spirit sort of thing. I think that I find really fascinating. I like my first book, travel book, was called The Dark Tourist, and that was about going, because I'd grown up in Lebanon where everyone just thought it was just a war zone, whereas it's the most beautiful, brilliant country I've ever lived in. I thought there must be other places like that they think are just awful, and they're brilliant. So I went to Cambodia because the killing fields was happening at the same time as Lebanon. I went skiing in Iran. I went to Chernobyl, which was kind of what you think it would be, Chernobyl, but it was interesting. So yeah, I like finding the normality in abnormal countries.
My understanding of Iran is it's an old culture, isn't it? It was very sophisticated and modern, and a lot of art and, nightlife and so on. And many countries have ruled, haven't they, in Iran? I think the British at some point. But has it got European feel, would you say, in Iran?
No, it doesn't. It definitely does not have a European feel. I mean, Tehran's a very ugly city, but it's right beneath these amazing mountains where you can go skiing in an hour. Iranians are, people call them Persians, but I mean, that's kind of posh Iranians, not wanting to be called Iranians in thing. Yeah, Persians or Iranians are not really Arab. They are separate in a funny way, in the same way that Lebanese wouldn't describe themselves as Arabs. They describe themselves as Phoenicians. And I think there is a distinction. There are desert tribes and Bedouin, and then there are very old, quite established cultures. And Iran is definitely one of those. And yeah, you definitely get a feeling of a long, just from the architecture, of incredible history there. I mean, we've been responsible, they very much mistrust the British, because in the 50s, we helped topple one of the first sort of elected people there after one of the Shahs, called Mossadegh. And he was basically toppled, and the last Shah was then put back in power. And they definitely feel, there's a sort of feeling in Iran that anything that happens, the Brits and the Americans have got something to do with it. And, with America, they're probably not that far wrong.
Just touching on what you said about the conspiracy tour you did in the book you wrote, The Conspiracy Tourist, and how that kind of made your mood quite low. And with these conspiracy theorists, we had a guest on the other week. He was an environmental entrepreneur. And some of the things he was, talking about were incredible, so positive, how we're going to overcome climate change, and there's so much happening. And then we said, well, what do you say to conspiracy theorists, like about climate change and so on? And he just said the best answer ever, didn't he? He said, do you know what? They don't matter. Just ignore them. And I think, we've got to a point where we do need to sort of go down that route. I think one of my favourite stories out of your book was the flat earther. I thought that was an amazing story, how you actually challenged him and took it all the way. And every time he couldn't prove it, he just put another obstacle in the way, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, this was not just a flat earther, but he was a square flat earther. So they believe that there are four, the square flat earth has four corners of the earth. And one of those is an island called Fogo off Newfoundland. And so I found a square flat earther in St. John's, and I said, I'll pay. Let's just go to one of the corners of the square flat earth. It's called Fogo. And if you're right, then we're going to fall off the edge of the world. If you're right, basically, that's it. Like, we're going to fall off the edge of the world. But if you are right, then I've killed the flat earthers, because we'll fall off the edge. So it was a kind of win-win for me. So it was interesting. And it is true, conspiracy theorists basically always put up arguments in the sense of you're either in on it yourself, you're part of you're a shill, you are part of the conspiracy, you've been paid normally by Bill Gates. Bill Gates seems to be, I'm still waiting for a massive check from Bill Gates. I'd love it. So no, it is all very weird. But when you say ignore them, I'm afraid you can't ignore them, because one of the problems we have at the moment is that we are all being siloed off online into your own particular belief systems. And I think everything changed when Donald Trump's first spokeswoman basically used the term, Kellyanne Conway used the term alternative facts. there just aren't alternative facts. There are facts, and that's it. But now, in the old days, we used to be able to argue around an accepted truth. And now everyone has their truth. And if you say something different, you're just a liar or it's fake news. And I think if you don't challenge it and you don't argue with it and you just ignore it, it festers and it grows in these different parts of the internet that you probably don't go to because your algorithm doesn't send you there. My algorithm got very weird because I was writing about conspiracies. I probably have quite a similar algorithm to you guys, but actually you suddenly realize when you get into that other algorithm that you realize why people feel like that, because you just look at them and you think these people are fucking idiots. It's just insane. But actually, when you're surrounded by that information source, they look at us and think we're idiots. They think exactly the same thing. I did this very odd podcast the other day, which I shouldn't have done, but I wanted to do it. It's called Heretics, and it's quite a right-wing podcast.
I've seen that one, yeah.
And I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to go on because it's full of just loonies normally agreeing with each other. And I'm going to go on and try and find some sort of agreement rather than just fight them. And actually, I have to say, the guy on it, Andrew Gold, gave me a really interesting perspective from his point of view. He felt all Muslims should be kicked out of, he's Jewish, so obviously he's probably concerned, that there are radical Islam are very anti-Jewish, and I take that totally on board. And there's a lot of anti-Semitism about at the moment. But he literally said he'd like all Muslims to be boosted out of Europe. And I'm just like, but that's just fucking mental. And then we started talking about why people feel like this. And he said there are somewhere people and anywhere people. And I've never thought of it like this. And he said, you, to me, you're an anywhere person. Like, you've grown up abroad, you're happy living somewhere else, you're happy going places. So the world is not that frightening. And that's about travel. It's about you've been there, you've realized basically everyone's the same. But somewhere people are people that have not really traveled much, maybe haven't left their town much, basically stick in their village. And these are the people that fall for all this nonsense about London falling, and they want Brexit because they think foreigners are to blame for everything. And again, I'm not blaming people like that. I saw it from a different perspective. And I think it's sad people think like that. But I think that's one of the things that travel, when you do travel, does dispel a bit, that it's not just evil foreigners and it's plucky Brits. Like, we're all idiots. We've got idiots. They've got idiots. So that's why I think travel is really important, because I think it takes away, people have a fear of the unknown. They have a fear of strangers. And I think travel takes away a fear of the unknown.
Because conspiracy theories have been around forever, haven't they? About the end of the world. That's thousands of years old, isn't it? It goes all the way back to when the Bible was first written. But these days, do you think there's an agenda behind these conspiracy theories, all this content being put online? I mean, what's in it, A, for the person pushing this post-truth, shall we say, or nonsense, and the people who are radicalized by it, such as your guy who believes the earth was square and flat? What's in it for him to believe that?
Well, I think, there's a certain type of conspiracy theories I don't really mind. They used to be quite fun and silly. And, if you're a flat earther, who cares, frankly? But actually, flat earth digs into something a bit deeper, which is sort of anti-science, anti-experts, anti-truth, really. That's the problem with it. And yes, there have always been conspiracy theories. For instance, during the Spanish flu after the First World War, there were a massive series of anti-vaxxers and people thinking that. The difference now are two things. I think one thing, the main thing is that, I joke in my book that back in the day, every village had an idiot. But now they've all gone online and met each other. And, there's sort of, however weird your view, you can find someone else to join your echo chamber online. So online is a massive problem with that. And I think certainly even in the old days of conspiracy theories, like I've read this incredible book about America just after 1918, 2 years after the war. And you sort of think it's very different. It's exactly what was going on then. They were hunting foreigners. They were kicking foreigners out. They were blaming foreigners for Spanish flu. They were hanging black people because they were trying to sort of push back any reform with that. And the people pushing all that fear that was driving that were politicians who were basically trying to come into power on the back of that. I think now we have politicians do that, but also basically social media is about clicks and it's about money, and conflict and argument creates clicks. No one's really going to click on a bunch of centrists chatting to each other and saying, on the one hand, on the other hand. What we get driven into polar opposites to fight. And those people are like Musk, are making insane amounts of money out of that.
Listening today actually about a platform called Kick, and they get all their content through what's called paedophile hunters and pickpockets. And apparently this platform has made so much money because that's what people want to watch.
It's terrifying, but my algorithm, I must enjoy that because I do like conflict. I can't I do like arguments. And yeah, I've seen a lot of those paedophile hunters where they trap someone, and sort of fair enough if these people are potential paedophiles, maybe they're doing a good service, but it feels very much like vigilante justice. And then what was the other one you said they were doing?
They're sort of the pickpockets, so they'll go and follow a pickpocket.
Again, the pickpockets, I watched that. There's a Brazilian guy who's now full-time, he's not on kick, but he's full-time stopping pickpockets. And again, I don't mind that. I think that's a good thing. I don't think pickpockets are particularly good. I'm obsessed with these people that are called First Amendment auditors. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but these are people that stand around in America and they walk into a post office or something owned by the government with cameras. And basically the postmaster says, get out, you can't film in here. And they go, yes, we can. It's our First Amendment right. And then some guy goes, fuck you. And then they have a fight. And it's like, it's terrible, but I watch it. So, it's not like I'm holier than thou. I watch a lot. And I find conflict very gripping. And it's rubbernecking, basically. We all stop when we're going past on the motorway. We shouldn't, and it's not good for us, but it's human nature.
And these sort of scenarios that are playing out, they're sort of live narratives. So people are being gripped by what's going to happen. What happens if they lure this person in?
Kick is very similar to, it's the sort of thing that HS Tiki Toki, who's the guy on the Louis Theroux documentary, they all thrive on those things because they're basically live streaming all the time.
Yeah.
And they're having to keep viewers because the more viewers they have, the more money they make. And so, you're constantly having to either do something outrageous, something hideous, or fake something hideous, which they often do. So I don't know. What the fuck do? I just as a squirrel and run around shouting to big mobile phones. I don't know if that's any better, but just today I just got my new big mobile for my new show. And in the old days, I was the problem shouting to a big mobile. Now the problem is the phones are the problem. So I've got a phone that when I tap my keyboard, it makes a massive noise of boom, 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 and I'm on a train doing that. So it's fun, and I'm doing that for views. So I don't know if I'm any better. So I don't know. I don't think kick is the big problem in our lives. I think what is the problem is fake news. It's news being wrapped up as though it's news, and it's actually not, and being fed to people that don't know the difference.
I think the worry is that social media has probably replaced travel for some people as a way of discovering the world. So what do we lose when we stop experiencing places and people firsthand?
Well, I think it's weird because actually in a way that's not true, because actually if you think about it, 30 years ago, mass tourism only started really in about 1972, when people started going to Spain and stuff. And before that, really travel was just for very rich, Victorian types and, public school twats like me going off to look at stuff. And I think actually people have seen a lot more of the world and people do travel a lot more. I think the problem is the world has adapted to that by being homogenized. So one of the reasons I wrote The Dark Tourist when I started was because I suddenly realized that actually however far you travel, it got very difficult. Wherever you went, you're only 500 meters from a Starbucks. And travel is about taking yourself out of your comfort zone and meeting very different people and adapting to them. And actually the world has tried to adapt to tourists. And so you get this sort of globalized, sanitized experience. And that's why I like traveling. I don't like traveling. I do like traveling, but I like traveling to war zones or places that are maybe tricky countries to visit, because although it's very unfortunate for people that live there, you actually get a genuine travel experience and you learn something. As long as you go there, if kick streamers went to North Korea, and I've seen a couple of them actually, they go there and they just take the piss. Now, I wrote a funny book about North Korea because it is funny, but my book was always aware that it's not funny for the people living under it, and it was aware about, it was not taking the piss out of it, it was taking a wry look at a weird dictatorship. So I don't know. I think people are way better traveled than our parents were. I just think that maybe they just go to all inclusives and don't go out into the place. So I don't know. Maybe they're better traveled by going to places they normally wouldn't go and see it online. Maybe it does give them more experience. I don't know. It just depends who's showing you that country.
Absolutely. And what their agenda is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Dom, humour's always been your way, I think, as far as I can see, into difficult conversations. Why do you think laughter can sometimes achieve what arguments never can, particularly when we're discussing strongly held beliefs?
No, if you look at my social media, I can't stop myself. I love arguing and I will take on everyone. And it's just, I call it whack a cunt, basically, excuse my French. But it's like you whack one and then another 100 pop up. And so it's pointless, really. Whereas if you're funny about it, it's much cleverer. As an example of how to deal with trolls, I argue with everyone, and I love it. I love an argument. Whereas James Blunt, for instance, I don't know if you've ever come across James Blunt on Twitter, he got so much abuse, and he dealt with it with such class and humour. I think humour disarms people. I think humour, weirdly, does tend to be quite an international thing. But I think what's interesting, certainly online, is it's sort of like road rage. Like when people are stuck in their car, they feel anonymous and they're beeping and stuff. But if you actually went and wound the window down, they'd suddenly be quite embarrassed and they wouldn't approach you like that in place. A lot of the people that I find that are promoting appalling things online are doing it because they're anonymous, and they're, for many reasons, they're doing it. But actually, occasionally, I get someone completely apologizing, or you say something funny and then they laugh about it, and then you realize that actually they were rude for another reason. So I'm just using this in my personal experience. I don't know. I mean, for me, I grew up, humor is defense for me. Growing up in Lebanon, it was a way of sort of, when you grow up in a war zone, comedy is massively important. I've just been to Ukraine. Ukraine, they have incredibly dark humor. Like, it's a way of coping. Northern Ireland has that. So it's a way of coping with stress and trauma. For me, it's a defense mechanism. I've always been quite funny and like quick on my feet. I don't know, so I just do it. But I mean, I don't know why do we need humor? It's just it's as essential as water, really, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. And certainly, to your point, I think people will lower their defensives far more when they're laughing than when they're arguing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very easy. I think it's more difficult to make someone laugh than it is to make someone angry, really. I think it's really easy to make someone angry. And in fact, even in my hidden camera world, Trigger Happy came about as a reaction to things like Beadle's About, which I just didn't like. Beadle's About, basically, the basic thing was, here's a bloke, he's got a car he loves, so let's get him to come down and someone will knock his car in the sea. He'll go mental and we'll watch that. And I did watch it, and I found it because it's basically like modern TikTok. I like watching arguments, but the Trigger Happy was a complete opposite of that, basically. I just wanted it to be silly and funny and just make people laugh and not make people angry. I think one of the great things about Trigger Happy is that it's a hidden camera show where you take people on and they don't know what's happening. But I think almost no one walked out of a Trigger Happy sketch feeling angry or not wanting to be in it. I think they just wanted to know what the fuck was going on. Yeah. So I think comedy is crucial.
Yeah, it's quite silly and surreal. Whereas, like you say, Beadle's About always had that mean streak, didn't it? And then you'd get Beadle coming out with a beard on a beard.
With his terrible fucking disguise. Yeah. I mean, I always felt really sorry for those. There was always some spotty kid who'd been given a job by a temping agency in a baked bean factory, and then the whole thing would explode. But you'd sort of think, poor guy thought he had a job. What happened then? It's like it wasn't a job. I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not pretending that what I do is in any way. I think I've still got a mean sense of humour to an extent. Comedy is, in a sense, laughing at other people. But it doesn't have to be. I think it can be inclusive. I don't know. Analysing comedy, because it's a weird thing.
Beadle's About very much got us to laugh at the victim of the prank. I always feel with Trigger Happy, we're laughing as much at your characters as we are at anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but I think hidden camera, certainly before Trigger Happy, was the lowest rung in comedy, and it kind of was what thick people did, to be honest. If you were smart, you wrote a sitcom or you went and did something interesting like experimental stand-up. And I just always loved hidden camera, and I thought very early Candid Camera was really clever and surreal and weird. And then it just got lost in this kind of studio nonsense. It was just a bit naff, frankly. And I wanted to make hidden camera cool and beautiful, which sounds really poncy. So that's what we did. So I was like, I think my hidden camera was the equivalent of a cool indie band compared to a big kind of pop album, if you like.
Yeah, that's certainly how I viewed it. In the 90s, it's very much...
Wasn't on in the 90s.
Was it not?
Early noughties.
Was that early noughties?
14th of January 2000, we slipped in. So the third thing you're going to say that everyone always says wrong is that I used to shout, I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone shouted at me every day for the last 25 years, and I never said it. I think it's called the Mandela effect.
Yeah, I think it is. I think one of the big things I remembered about it was the music, though, because I always thought the music was really cool. Did you pick that yourself, or
I picked every single track of that, and music was much more important to me than the comedy. So we'd film for like 6 months, and then I'd sit in and edit for 4 months. With our editor was the drummer in my old band. And that was my greatest pleasure, was taking weird tracks. And actually Trigger Happy was the very first comedy show to have a soundtrack. And that was so weird that when we handed it into Channel 4, they made us go to a focus group, and we sat behind glass while these 6 very depressed Essex women watched the whole show. And they laughed, but at the end, one of them went, yeah, it's funny, but can you put cartoon music? And thank God we didn't do that, because I thought that was I thought it gave the music I chose gave Trigger Happy unwarranted depth, which I like.
Yeah. Well, I actually bought the CD, and you introduced me to a lot of new tracks that I hadn't
Three
heard before.
CDs, three
Uh,
gold soundtrack CDs I got from it, and that was one of the best things. We had bands got back together. There was a band called the Honey Smugglers who had broken up, and then they only had one song, and that was big on Trigger Happy. They got back together on the back of it and stuff. So yeah, I love that. And I do a speakeasy once a month in Cheltenham, and actually one of the things I do is try and find a lot of bands I used in Trigger Happy and get them back together and get them on, and like it's brilliant. Music, I'm much more interested in the comedy.
Yeah.
Just go back to travel and conspiracy and being more open-minded and being maybe less susceptible to misinformation. Where would you tell people to go to open their minds more? How would you advise people to do that?
I think you have to have it. Just some people don't like it, and they just want to go somewhere and just lie by a pool. And there's nothing wrong with that. Or they want to go and lie on the beach, and everyone says, oh, well, when you're there, you should go and look, and everyone goes off on their excursion to look for a waterfall or something, or a ruin or whatever. I don't know. I can't tell people what to do. I just think, the thing I do is I look at a map of flights, and I like to fly to places which don't have direct flights from Britain. They almost always tend to be brilliant. I have to say, I get quite embarrassed being British abroad. I don't think we've got a great reputation. And so I tend to keep that quiet. And there's nothing that makes me happier than go. I mean, as an example, Corsica is this incredible island in the Mediterranean. It's just not been ruined by Brits. It's it really is a French destination. I think there is one flight through Paris from Bristol Airport. And I remember going and I was flying, and like Bristol was just full of tattooed Brits sinking 7 pints at 6 a.m. before going up to Ibiza. And there was this tiny queue of people reading books, wearing Panama hats, going to Corsica. So I don't know. I love Corsica. I love, it's the road less traveled. I like places that are hard to get to and that demand a bit of effort and don't cater to you. You have to cater to them. So I love that. I think one of the things really changing, it's extraordinary. When I went to Japan for the first time, I don't think I've ever felt more out of my. I don't know if you've ever seen the film
Lost in Translation.
Lost in Translation, which is one of my favorite films, and that's those scenes there, like where he's like in an alien world. No one's speaking the language. Everyone looks different. And when I first arrived in Tokyo, I'm a fucking good traveler. I can go anywhere. It took me 3 hours to find my hotel. It was like 100 meters from the railway station. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I think what's really changing now, and weirdly, my son is going off to Japan to do a season there as a ski guy. I don't know what the fuck he's doing, but he's just finished uni and can't get a job here. So he's going to Japan. And so I'm going to go and see him. And what's really changed, these earbuds I've just bought do simultaneous translation in 62 languages. I mean, that's fucking insane. And then if I'm in, one of the big problems in Japan was I couldn't read anything. And now I just put my phone up and it translates everything. And I think that, we're bashing technology a bit. And I think there are really amazing bits of technology coming. I mean, again, I think I love learning languages. I speak 4, love to learn more, but I can't speak every language in the world. And the idea that you can talk to someone like without shouting at them loudly in English. I think that's amazing. And maybe that will change things a little bit. I don't know. I mean, we're so lucky as Brits that so many people speak English. That's why we don't really make an effort, because at the end of the day, most people speak English. But, if you were Dutch or you were, I speak Czech, which is the most pointless language in the world. It's literally, it's only spoken in Czechoslovakia. And I was there when Czechoslovakia split. And that was like half the country. They went and spoke Slovak. So it's pointless. But I love those things. I think they're so special. I think they're amazing.
Okay, let's just do some quick fire questions. Fire through some stuff. So of all the places you've been, favourite country?
Well, my favourite, it's naff, but my favourite country is always the next one I'm going to, and I'm utterly obsessed with Algeria. I think Algeria is the big undiscovered country in the world, and everything. Like growing up, I read L'Étranger by Camus, and I was obsessed with Algeria. My favourite film of all time is The Battle of Algiers, which is a film made just after the Independence War, because Algeria was a part of France. It wasn't a colony; it was literally a part of France. And there's this amazing film called The Battle of Algiers where they actually used people that were in the struggle in the film. But then it's got these other extraordinary things. It's a bit like Beirut, it's a bit like Lebanon. It's got this huge Sahara desert, but 30 miles of Algeria by the sea is pine forests and beautiful towns. Algiers is a bit like Beirut. It rises up from the Mediterranean. It's got incredible food. It's got really interesting places like Oran, that's where when the French surrendered to the Germans, we sank the French fleet so that it wouldn't go to the Germans. And that's there in that harbour. And then it's got this incredible place called Timgad, which is the most perfectly preserved Roman city. It's a whole Roman city in the desert because it's so dry. It's been kept almost totally intact. it shits on Pompeii. And I fly a hot air balloon, and my ambition this year is to go and fly a hot air balloon over Timgad. So Algeria is, but I haven't been there yet. But there are so many countries I love. Syria is an incredibly underrated country. I absolutely love Syria. I've just been on an island called Lamu, which is a Muslim island, Kenya, which is just fucking fantastic. I loved Cambodia, but I think Cambodia's on the tipping thing of being ruined slightly. I just love everywhere. Yeah.
I just think on the hot air balloon, first time I ever went on a hot air balloon was a couple of years ago. I did it in Morocco. We went over the Atlas Mountains and first thing in the morning, and that's an incredible thing to do. So I'm so glad I did that.
I just went to Cappadocia, which is kind of like hot air balloon central. So it looks like a moon landscape in Turkey. It's on the Armenian border. But it's the only place in the world where you fly with, in the morning, about 800 balloons rise up. And it is the most extraordinary thing. And I bought a hot air balloon as a kind of, it's not something it's not an impulse buy, but my wife was in a book club and this elderly lady came in and she flies a hot air balloon and she said she was giving it up because she had a bad heart condition. And I just asked, I didn't know how much a hot air balloon cost. So I said, how much does a hot air balloon cost? And she said, well, you can buy mine for $5,000 all in. And hot air balloons have a life of 400 hours roughly of flying. And this had done 200 hours, so it had loads of to go. And it was $5,000 for the balloon, the basket, all the gas stuff, the thing you drive it around in. And I thought, fuck it, I'll buy it. So I bought it and I put it on Twitter. I said, just a bit of a random day, just bought a hot air balloon. And the world champion hot air balloonist lives an hour away from me, contacted me and said, oh my God, ballooning's so full of cunts. It'd be great to have you in here. And he took me off to Italy, to a place called Mondovi, where the Alps surround this town on three sides, so the wind is almost zero, and taught me to fly hot air balloons. And I'm like, in England, you can't go below 500 meters and you can't go anywhere near anything. In Italy, you can fucking fly around and you can literally touch roofs and you land in the square and people bring you drinks. And in Italy, you're not called a hot air balloons, you're called a mongolfiere, which just sounds so cool. So yeah, so that's very cool as well. That's a random thing I do.
What a great story that is.
You mentioned food a few times. What's the weirdest meal you've had?
Oh, it upsets me so much, and I can't. But it was in North Korea, and there was just nothing to eat in North Korea. It was fucking awful, and we were really hungry all the time. And then we went for a sort of organised meal with the representatives of the government, and we went into the first kind of really posh building we'd seen, and we came into this room. And there were these beautiful, I have to say, sort of pagoda-type gold bowls, and it sort of had a stew in it. And we were all hungry. We'd eaten nothing but sort of scraggy omelettes and shit, frankly. And we were so hungry. Anyway, so we sat down with the minister and we all ate this thing, and it was fantastic. And of course, we then found out it was ginseng dog.
Oh.
And it was, and literally, I remember coming home and my two Labradors just looked at me.
Somehow knew.
And they just knew. They absolutely fucking knew. And, joking aside, like that whole trade in dogs and the markets in China is so horrific. And I'm such an animal head. I can't get my head around why I'm not a vegetarian. I'm a complete hypocrite and it's terrible. But that really upsets me.
I don't know how easy this one's going to be to answer, but I'll give it a go. Friendliest people?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. There are people you expect to be friendly. The Danes are very friendly, except in a funny sense. They're quite cliquey as well. I know people that love the Danes, are married to a Dane. They've had Danish friends for 20 years. But they've never been invited into their house. Like, they're quite different in that way. I think I'm going to say, because I've had so much experience of it, the Lebanese. And I think it's so funny because it's so different from what you imagine, that all Lebanese are kind of suicide bombers and shooting you. And like this terrible violence has happened in Lebanon with the civil war. But the hospitality in Lebanon is so astonishing and so almost compulsory. You almost have to fight your way out with a gun, which is very Lebanese, from people dragging you in and trying to feed you. I did this book where I walked across Lebanon from the Israeli border to the Syrian border and walked for 27 days. Every night you were taken in, you were fed this incredible food. They just can't do enough for you. I think that's a very, very weirdly, although these were both Christians and Maronites and Muslims, it's a very Muslim thing. The thing I really remember, and it's a really traumatic story, we were in the Syrian desert when I was a kid, because my dad was like an amateur archaeologist, and we were driving around and stuff, and we'd gone out to this salt lake, and we had to go back to this place called Palmyra, and we had to get back before dark, and we drive past this Bedouin tent, and they come out waving, so we stop, and they say, please come in for tea. And we said, look, we'd really love to, but we have to get back to Palmyra before it gets dark. And they wouldn't take no for an answer. And in the end, we just had to drive off because we had to get, and we look in the mirror and we see they're fucking following us in two pickup trucks. And the guy, and it's a memory I really remember, like I was quite young, this Bedouin guy, they screech in front of us. He jumps out and he puts a handgun to us and he forces us back to have tea. And I just remember my mum, who was very British, going, "Give him a boiled sweet." And it was terrible. And I was terrified. But actually, they just made us go back to the tent and we had a really nice chat and cup of tea and then they let us go. It was like the most weird forced hospitality ever. That was really friendly.
You will have a cup of tea.
Yeah. You will fucking drink this tea.
I bet, and you will like it.
Yeah.
How about the biggest culture shock, would you say, Dom? Where's giving you the greatest culture shock?
Did you say Japan, maybe?
Well, I mean, Japan, I expected a culture shock and I kind of loved it. So as a culture-wise, Japan's very much a monoculture, and so they don't nod towards you or anything. And yeah, it was. I mean, North Korea, you just cannot, you can't have a bigger shock than North Korea. Like, North Korea is so off the chart. It is genuinely like space travel. It's so different. I think the most culture shock in that I normally like love wherever I go, and I just feel I kind of roll with it and I'm kind of not frightened. I went to the Congo to go after a monster. I wrote a book about monsters, and there was a monster called the Mekele Mbembe, which is supposed to be the blocker of rivers, and it's in a round lake in the north of the Congo. And I landed in Brazzaville, and then I got this flight that was not insured, like by the EU. Like, it wasn't even registered as a flight, and it was like literally the window was broken, and we land, and I'm the only white guy landing in this place, and I'm supposed to get a canoe and go down the Congo to this village, and I get arrested, and I knew it was because they wanted a bribe, and so I spent 3 days in sort of in my room not a hotel but just a house, but I'm under arrest till I can get some money. And then I get on this canoe and I go all the way down to this village, and by this time there's only one flight back. I've got to get there, I've got to get to this lake and then come back, otherwise I'm not going to make it. And I get there and the village said, first we have to discuss the fee to go to the lake. I go, fine, how much do you want? And they did this whole thing where they had a port parole. So like the chief would hand to this guy with a stick and he'd say, tell him we want 800 euros, and he'd come to me. This thing went on ages. I was like, whatever you fucking want. Finally we agreed on a price, and I thought, right, let's go. And they said, no, we can't, we have to celebrate. And they had these cartons of, it was called French jungle wine, and honestly it was like made special brew like a cocktail. The village got so pissed, and the guy who was supposed to be taking me the next day went mental. Like, he went all blood red and he attacked me with a machete, and he was tied to a tree by the rest of the tribe. And at that stage I thought, you know what, Tintin probably would have cracked on, but I'm fucking out of my depth here. And so they all passed out, and I just got in a canoe and fucked off and went home, never got to the lake. So that's where I was like, okay, this is too, I'm tapping out. So that was the most.
I mean, I know you like going off the beaten track a bit more, but what would you say is the most overrated tourist attraction?
Disneyland. I mean, where do I fucking hate? I can go through so many places. Vegas. Fucking hate Las Vegas. It's really overrated. Paris. I fucking hate Paris. I lived in Paris for a year. I speak fluent French. I love the French, but I hate Parisians. They're a completely different group of people. The only time to go to Paris is in August, when all the Parisians have fucked off, and then it's really nice. Fucking hate Parisians. They're so up their own arse. They still think they're the greatest cooks in the world, when French cooking hasn't been anything for like 40 years. They let the Germans in. They can stop all traffic by burning sheep or lorries on the road, but they let the Germans in. They were collaborators. I'm going over the top for comment because I love the French.
And what's the biggest myth that people still believe?
Don't know. Do you mean in travel or in just general?
Oh, can we do both?
Not really, because I haven't got an answer for either. But I think the biggest myth is all that poverty is beautiful sort of thing. I hate that kind of, there's majesty in poverty. It's kind of like poverty tourism. It's like, look, they've got nothing, but they're so happy. No, they're fucking not. Like, vast amount of people are not happy at all, and can't bear people who travel. And then that whole haggling thing. I mean, in Morocco, maybe, like, you're in the souk in Morocco, that's like a sport. But you're in India, and you've got a naked kid standing next to your tuk-tuk, and you're not giving them money, or the guy charges you the equivalent of 40 cents to drive you for 4 hours, and you haggle him down. I think that shit is time it's gone. And yet people will come back to you and say, yeah, but look at India. It's got a space program. It's the fastest growing country in the world. It is, but it's becoming more like the problem, which is there's a massive divide between the rich and the poor. I think that kind of divine poverty that people seem to get all excited about is just horseshit.
Absolutely. I mean, and Dom, when people say that the world's all going to hell in a handcart, what would make you reply, everything's fine, probably?
I think everything is fine, probably. I'm very much just like, I mean, I've stopped listening to the news. Like, I have to say, I'm a news addict. I'm a junkie. Like, I literally can't stop listening to the news. When I fall asleep, I have to have something in my ear playing, and I used to listen to the World Service and listen to stuff. Over COVID, I have to. I think with Trump, Brexit, Trump, COVID, that like the holy trinity of ghastliness, like sort of made me just unable to listen to news. It was so depressing, relentlessly depressing, that I stopped listening to it. And I think there is a glimmer of hope. Like it looked like with the rise of Trump, that everywhere was just going to fall. We were going to go reform. Hungary was going to go terrible. Everyone was eventually going to go right wing and racist. And actually, there's a glimmer of hope. I think, France has hit back and Hungary kicked out Orban. And I think people are finally starting to realize that Trump's a cunt, but I don't know. Even Farage, I think the 5 million thing, people are finally like, come on. It's this insanity that people can look at these people, living, breathing, lying elite grifters, and see them as somehow fighting the elite. They are the fucking elite. They're awful people driven by nothing but money and personal greed. So having said that, I think everything is going to be better. I'm a goth. I'm an ex-goth. I got kicked out of the goth community when I was 21 for being slightly too cheerful. But I think I do have goth tendencies. But I am a glass half full person. And I just think decent. When I travel, I just meet a hell of a lot of, I meet so many more decent people than I do bad people. And I do that when I'm filming on the streets in England, when I'm traveling. And I just think overall, the cunts are I'm sorry to use that word, but there's no other word. The cunts are in a minority in the end. And I think we need to remember that. Good will out.
Thank you, Dom. I think we're getting pretty near running out of time. So, Dom, just finish this off. Just remind listeners, where can they find your latest work? What's coming up?
Well, I'm doing a massive tour, Trigger Happy 25th anniversary tour. If you liked Trigger Happy 25 years ago, basically the guy I made Trigger Happy with is on the spectrum, and he kept every tape and everything we ever filmed. So I've kind of gone back in time and looked at everything. I find the very first thing we ever filmed, which sums up Trigger Happy in a nutshell. It's basically me dressed as a womble on Wimbledon Common having a nervous breakdown and littering. And I've got all that, but I've also got the 8 hours of me dressed as a womble saying to Sam, is this funny? I don't know if it is, all the doubts and that. So we've got lots of outtakes. We've got lots of me being beaten up. I've got stories behind some of the most famous clips. I've got the mobile phone. I'll tell you all about that. But more excitingly than that, we've got new stuff because we've started filming this new stuff. And what started as a bit of a nostalgia thing has now turned into a whole new thing. So the last third of the show is new stuff, which is really, really funny. And I'll be rotating that around. And then at the same time as the tour starts in September, I've got this new show dropping, which I haven't announced yet, but fuck it, it's called Mugwaffin. And it's going to be details of where you go. It's going to be online because basically I made Trigger Happy and own not a thing of Trigger Happy. And so if I go on Facebook or YouTube, I've been banned twice on Facebook, not because I do anything wrong, because you're just completely at their whim. And I'm just sick of doing stuff and asking people permission. So I'm just literally going to make the show I want to make, which is not rude or racist or shocking. It's just funny. And I own it. And that's what we're going to do. And I think if you love Trigger Happy, you'll love this. The targets nowadays are fucking insane. I've got this great new character called the Crypto King of Dubai, who's a guy who went to Dubai once on a holiday and has come back and is now in the manosphere and tries to pay everything with fake crypto currencies. I've got this great character called Gneb, the Good News Energy Bear. It's me dressed as a bear, knocking on the door, pretending to be from the energy company, apologizing for putting your prices up 300% and giving them a balloon. And then I did get savagely beaten, Gneb, and I got tied by a bunch of kids to a lamppost. And I heard the most frightening thing ever. I couldn't see anything. I had the bear costume on. And one kid goes, I saw him giving a kid a balloon. Another one goes, he's a paedophile. Yeah. And then the final word you don't want to hear is like, burn him. And I'm like, fuck. And then Sam came in and got me out. But all that's on film. We've got all that. So all that's going to happen. So if you want to see that, go to domjoly1l.tv. So domjoly.tv. And that's my website. It's got everything on it. And it's going to be great. But come to a show because it's going to be fucking brilliant.
We'll be there.
Where are you guys?
We're going to come to the Norwich one.
Oh, in Norwich, great.
Yeah.
Am I doing Playhouse? I don't know what I'm doing.
You're doing Epic this time, so the old Anglia TV studio.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, look, come and say hello when we're there. I loved it. I had a great gig in Norwich when I did Conspiracies.
Yeah, I was there for that as well. It was good. That was really good. Yeah, it went down really well, didn't it? Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it does. It was really nice. And I love Norwich, actually.
I was sitting next to the guy who was the plant.
So sometimes we had a guy who basically pretended to be a conspiracy theorist and would heckle me through the show. And then at the half time, he would rush on stage and basically pretend to beat me up. And then the joke was I'd run off and then it would say, Mr. Jolly can't return for the second half. And I'd come back as this not very well thought through conspiracy character. But sometimes people knew it was a plant. And sometimes like we had a couple of have a go heroes who we had an ex-policeman who, as he was running to the thing, just fucking lamped him out. So he was always terrified that he was going to get done. But
Well-
yeah, they're always fun. So come and say hello when you come. That'd be really nice.
We will do. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, guys, thank you very much. That was fun. I didn't know what I was doing, but I've just done a lot of talking. But it was certainly, you seem like my sort of people, so that's good.
No, that's great.
And Jem, you're very quiet in the background, but thank you.
I am very quiet. I mean, these guys are very cool. They know when to do the thing, and then there's me just like, I just like listening.
I love that you couldn't even be bothered to get out of bed for this thing. It's amazing.
Damn it, you're on to me.
Yeah, thank you. That was brilliant.
Thanks ever so
Excellent.
much. And
All right, guys.
yeah, good luck with the with all the stuff
Thank
you
you
got.
very much.
See you in
Thank
Norwich.
you. Nice
Oh,
chatting
very
to you.
cool.
See you in
Thanks very
Norwich.
much.
Yeah.
Bye now. Well, that's about all we've got time for this week. Thanks to Dom for joining us. So, look, we've travelled around the world. We've investigated conspiracy theories, discussed why people believe strange things. Somehow managed to do all that without leaving the shed, which is probably for the best because I'm not sure our budget stretches to 3 flights to Bhutan. And that's a really nice message to take away from today's conversation, right? The world can look like a terrifying place when you watch it through a screen, but get out there, meet people, listen to their stories. You'll often discover that we're all stranger, funnier, and more similar than social media might have you believe. If you've enjoyed the episode, please do all the usual podcast things. I know you won't because I ask you every week, but follow us, leave us a review, tell your friends, tell a stranger. If you particularly enjoyed Dom, go and find his books, his shows, and his other work. Next week, it'll just be the three of us again, rummaging through the week's headlines to find the stories that prove civilization hasn't completely given up. There'll be good news, there'll be bad jokes. There'll probably be at least one story involving an animal doing something inexplicable. So until then, look after yourselves, look after each other, stay curious, and remember that whatever anyone might tell you to the contrary, that everything's fine. Probably.